Welcome back to another episode of Probie to Pro. Today, we are going to talk about enhanced line improvement trip trade, or as everyone calls it, ELITT. Basically, ELITT allows you to trade your trips with uncovered trips in the company's inventory. We have several ways to adjust our schedules, but you may well find that this one is the most useful. You can direct drop and pick up trips in ELITT, but probably you will use the trade function the most. ELITT opens on the 24th of each month for pairings in the following month. In the fourth quarter of 2025, the opening date of ELITT will change to the 23rd, so pay attention to your email for the final implementation date. Open times vary by domicile, which you can find in contract section 9.3. While CBA Section 9 talks about the timelines, Section 10.3 discusses the mechanics of ELITT. Here are a few of the most important things. Once ELITT opens, it is first come, first served, meaning seniority is not a factor. Things move extremely fast right at the beginning, and you will also often find that in the first few minutes of trading, the trip you wanted is no longer available by the time you try to execute the trade. But the good news is that ELITT inventory continues to change throughout the month as pilots call in sick, get called out for military leave, or trips are dropped for union or company office duties. You can either continue to check for changes, or you can set up alerts in Line Tuner so you'll get a text alert when a pairing that meets your parameters drops into the ELITT inventory. Okay, so now let's talk about a few of ELITT's governing principles. The gray bar you see in ELITT is technically called the ELITT Umbra. This notates that 33 hours prior to the 0900 open time close for the pairing in question, that pairing is no longer selectable in ELITT and moves into the daily open time inventory. Okay, bear with me for a second while we talk about remaining duties to cover. This is a little complicated. There's some math involved that you can and should read about yourself in the contract, section 10 Charlie 13, and in the scheduling handbook. But basically, remaining duties to cover is a measure of uncovered duty periods on any given day relative to the total duty periods in that base and seat for the whole month. It's a way to prevent excessive uncovered flying on any given day that could risk the stability of the overall operation. So for each day, there is a count of how many more duty periods can be added to the inventory before reaching the limit, and that's the number that you see on this page. When remaining duties to cover drops to 3 or fewer, that day will turn yellow, and it turns red when remaining duties to cover drops to 0 for that date. In order to trade for a trip with a different start date, the remaining duties to cover on the start date of your current trip must be equal to or greater than the number of duties in the pairing you want to trade out of. For example, I have a 3-day trip that starts on the 6th. Remaining duties to cover on the 6th is -4, meaning that I cannot trade that trip for one that starts on a different day. In order to do that, remaining duties to cover on the 6th would have to be at least 3. However, I could trade for a different 3 or 4-day trip that starts on the 6th, the same start date. I know that's a lot, so please rewatch this video or reference the contract and the scheduling handbook if it's still not quite clear. And of course, you can always call your rep and they'll answer your questions. Additional restrictions apply on certain holidays, meaning that you can trade into trips over a holiday, but you may not be able to trade out of trips over certain holidays. These include July 4th, Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, and New Year's Day. Net zero is another thing you'll need to know about. It is a measure of how many duty periods have been picked up or dropped in that base and seat. So if Orlando first officers cumulatively pick up more duty periods out of ELITT than they started with, net zero increases. Conversely, if they drop more duty periods into ELITT than were originally uncovered, net zero decreases. So if you trade up from a 3-day to a 4-day, net zero increases by 1. However, Contractually, you may not conduct a trade that would result in a negative net zero. So in order to trade down from a 4-day to a 3-day pairing in ELITT, net zero would already have to be positive. Finally, your individual duty count must stay above -4. Your duty count starts at 0 each month and increases and decreases as you add or drop duty periods to and from your schedule. While there is no limit to positive duty counters, it cannot go below -4. So what all this means is that trading down can be tricky, but trading up or adding duty periods to your schedule is usually doable, assuming that you are legal. One caveat: net zero is available to everyone in your seat and base. So let's say you have 2 3-day trips that you want to turn into a 4-day and a 2-day. It's a net change of 0 duty periods, so it should work. But just be careful, because as soon as you trade the 3-day up to 4, that positive net zero is now available to everyone in that base, and someone else could use it to trade down before you do. Many pilots have alerts set up to notify them if net zero changes, and they do go quickly. Also, you will see that ELITT shows trips in your domicile only. If you have picked up a trip from another domicile and click on it in ELITT, you will see trips in that domicile that are eligible to trade and are limited to pairings of the same number of duty periods. To execute a trade, select one or more of your current trips, and then select the pairing or pairings from the company inventory that you want to trade into. Click the save icon. You will see a confirmation screen to complete the trade. You can also directly pick up a pairing that you are legal for by selecting the pairing and clicking the up arrow. You will see the net zero increase by the number of duty periods that you have selected. Remember that this net zero is available to everyone in your seat and base. If the net zero and remaining duties to cover are equal to or greater than the number of duty periods in a pairing you want to drop, you can select one of your pairings, click the down arrow, and drop the pairing into the ELITT inventory without trading it for another trip. For now, ELITT doesn't do much for pilots on reserve, but reserve ELITT is coming in the fourth quarter of 2025. Until then, reserve pairings cannot be traded in ELITT, but you may be able to trade or give them away in Trip Trade Giveaway. But we'll talk about that more in another video. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.